allocates resources, and holds the executive to account on behalf of the sovereign people. Parliament embodies representation, legislation, and oversight grounded in our national values and enriched by public participation so that the promise of the Constitution becomes the practice of everyday governance. And I wish to confirm that the public participation bill is before Parliament, and the Leader of Majority promises that soon we'll have a legislation on that. As Attorney General, I affirm the Executive's commitment to constructive interbranch committee, candid scrutiny without recourse, cooperation without capture, and respect for the distinct mandates that make our republic stable and responsive. A principled legislature strengthens policy, safeguards public finance, and sustains public trust. It is now my honor to invite the Right Honorable Dr. Moses Masika Wetang'ula, EGH Speaker of the National Assembly, to deliver his remarks.
Thank you very much, Attorney General. Your Excellency, our President, our Deputy President, and allow me to ride on the established protocols. Congratulations to Your Excellency for setting aside this Katiba Day for our nation. It reminds us, in case we forget, that this was a long, winding journey to get to this Constitution. Today marks 15 years since the promulgation of the Constitution of Kenya. Katiba Day is therefore a day to reflect on the 15-year journey of the implementation of the Constitution by celebrating the milestones we have made so far. It is noteworthy that the Constitution of Kenya 2010 marked a paradigm shift from the governance structure under the repealed Constitution by, among others, recognizing the centrality of the people in the conduct of the affairs of our nation. As Parliament, we are conferred with the sacrosanct constitutional functions of legislation, representation, and oversight. Over the last 15 years, Parliament has been at the forefront of ensuring the implementation of the Constitution. Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, looking at the 15-year journey, the following is a highlight of our key achievements as Parliament, more particularly the National Assembly. Parliament passed and enacted 63 bills to implement the Constitution as spelled out in the 5th schedule to the Constitution. The legislation included legislation on leadership and integrity, representation of the people, land and environment, devolved government, public finance, and the public service, among others. Parliament has also passed and enacted 471 bills that have promoted good governance and social and economic development of the country. The bills include the recently passed Anti-Money Laundering Amendment Bill 2025 and the Conflict of Interest Bill 2025, which are now acts of Parliament. Further, to implement the Bill of Rights under Chapter 4 of the Constitution, Parliament has enacted and passed several pieces of legislation to promote the fundamental human rights, including the right to the highest standard of health and the right to accessible and adequate housing, this being the Social Health Insurance Act and the Affordable Housing Act, respectively, among others. The National Assembly has, over the past 15 years, provided for the financing of the national budget through enactment of 13 appropriation acts. The new Constitution vests the budget process in the National Assembly. Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, the National Assembly appropriates resources that are essential for execution of constitutional and statutory mandates of various organs of government. Equally, funds have been appropriated to the NGCDF to fund various key national projects at the constituencies and to NGAF to fund affirmative action initiatives. As part of its mandate, the National Assembly has approved the ratification of 98 treaties and conventions in accordance with Article 26 of the Constitution and the Treaty Making and Ratification Act. This has ensured that the country's commitments to international obligations are informed by national interest. Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, under Article 10 and 118 of the Constitution, Parliament is obligated to ensure public access and participation. In this regard, post-2010 Constitution, Parliament is more open and accessible to the public. For instance, in the last 2 months, we have hosted over 500,000 school children and many other visitors who have had an opportunity to not only appreciate how Parliament works, but also freely interact with their elected representatives within the precincts of Parliament. Parliament continues to facilitate public participation and involvement of the people in its legislative and other business through robust public participation mechanisms, including the use of e-technology, social media platforms, and public hearings at the constituency and county levels. Since the promulgation of the new Constitution, the National Assembly has received and considered 1,233 public petitions in furtherance of the right of every person to petition Parliament in terms of Article 119 of the Constitution. Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, the National Assembly has for the last 15 years vetted 199 state officers nominated for appointment to various state offices, including cabinet secretaries, principal secretaries, holders of independent offices and commissions, and diplomatic postings. The National Assembly has processed 3,427 questions and required cabinet secretaries to respond to questions in plenary on various matters of concern to the people of Kenya. In the last 15 years, the National Assembly has initiated and considered 18 impeachment motions, including impeachment motions against cabinet secretaries and holders of independent offices and constitutional commissions accused of violating the Constitution. This has ensured compliance with the guiding principles of leadership and integrity by state officers. Suffice to mention that we also considered a motion for impeachment of a deputy president. As part of oversight, the National Assembly, through its watchdog committees, continues to examine the audited accounts of state organs to ensure the prudent use of public resources by state organs. Further, the Public Debt Committee of the National Assembly oversights the National Treasury to ensure responsible borrowing and compliance with the statutory public debt ceilings, which is an issue of concern to the people of Kenya. Over the period, the National Assembly approved 4 special motions for deployment of KDF in DRC Congo, within the country, and the deployment of the National Police Service to the country of Haiti. Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, the National Assembly has passed and enacted several electoral laws in compliance with the general principles of the electoral system, including free and fair elections, which are simple, accurate, verifiable, secure, accountable, and transparent, as provided for under Article 81 of the Constitution. Additionally, the National Assembly has previously facilitated the selection and constitution of the IEBC, including the recent appointment of the chairperson and members of the IEBC. Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, Parliament has over the relevant period passed 27 division of revenue bills and count allocation of revenue bills to ensure adequate allocation of national revenue to counties. It is important to note that in the current 2025-26 budget, the equitable share of revenue to counties stands at 21% of all revenue collected by the national government. In real terms, the equitable share of revenue allocated to counties has grown from 190 billion in the financial year 2013-2014 to 415 billion in the financial year 2025-26. This is in addition to the conditional additional allocations, donor funds, and on-source revenue for our counties. The National Assembly also engineered the operationalization of the House of Senate and 47 county assemblies by extending training, capacity building, and provision of startup staff. This cooperation and collaboration remains a continuing engagement by the National Assembly and other legislative organs. Additionally, Parliament has in the past years played critical roles in promoting constructive dialogue on the issues of national importance. An example of such is the Building Bridges Initiative and the National Dialogue Committee process, commonly referred to as BBI and NADCO, respectively. Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, while the achievement of the two-thirds gender rule has been elusive, the country has recorded a progressive growth of elected women in various categories. From 16 elected women members of Parliament in single constituencies in 2013 general elections, we now boast of 29 women members of Parliament, not to mention the 7 women governors elected by the people of Kenya. We have also recorded a significant number of elected youth to the National Assembly, which stands at 46 in the current National Assembly. Similar impressive numbers have been recorded in all our 47 counties. The Constitution 2010 led to the establishment of a bicameral legislature and increased members from 224 to 418. To this end, Parliament has undergone several structural developments to cater for the increased membership, including construction of the office complex, namely the Bunge Tower, and other attendant facilities. Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, from the foregoing, Parliament has indeed made great strides and achieved key milestones in facilitating the realization of the aspirations of the people of Kenya under the new Constitution. Our Parliament has become an admirable and appreciable benchmarking center for many parliaments seeking to learn on best practices and ideals of parliamentary democracy born out of our 2010 Constitution. Going to the future, Your Excellency, it is necessary to enact a clear law that deals with the issue of public participation. The Attorney General, cooperating with Parliament, has a draft bill that is before the House, which is now being harmonized by the House Committee with 2 other bills that were drafted by individual members so that we can simplify and make public participation user-friendly, cost-effective to avoid unnecessary and unhelpful duplex processes. On this particular matter, I have had discussions with Her Ladyship, the Chief Justice. I can give an example. We had a bill called the Sugar Bill. It started from the National Assembly, went through public participation, using public resources. Members of the National Assembly went all around the country to get bills, to get views from members of the public who will consume the product. We finished the bill, pass it on to the Senate, they start again the same round of public participation, going to meet the same people, pick the same views, spend the same resources from the same envelope, and if we don't do that, some Kenyan goes to court and the court say there was not adequate public participation. This is the reason why it is so important that we must have this law passed as quickly as possible, and I promise Kenyans that within the first 1 month of our resume from recess on 23rd September, this bill will be ready for presentation to the President for assent. In conclusion, the Constitution being a living and dynamic document, it is our considered view that it is desirable, and this has been alluded to by Professor Makau, the Attorney General, and somebody else, that we have a continuous, candid conversation on the 2010 Constitution to be able to evaluate what is working, what has worked efficiently, and what is not working or what is excessive in the Constitution. Such exercise would help our country to continue with our journey to achieving a near-perfect Constitution for our country. Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellency, with those remarks, it is my singular honor and pride on behalf of the Parliamentary Service Commission and the National Assembly to join Your Excellency, leaders present, and compatriots in celebrating this milestone in our constitutional history. You may wonder why my brother, the Speaker of the Senate, is not here. He is sitting in the Senate, presiding over one of the creations of this Constitution, having a process of impeachment of a governor before the House. And this is the beauty of this Constitution, that if you are impeached at the county, you still have an appellate structure at the Senate for your case to be heard. And you still have an appellate structure to go to the courts to challenge whatever we do. This Constitution is wonderful, this Constitution is great, but it will be as great as we adhere to its ideals, to its principles, and its implementation. May God protect our country. May God make us more conscious of our rights, and may God make Kenyans understand and appreciate that we must be each other's keeper in protecting our country. Thank you.
Your Excellency the President, fellow Kenyans, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, as my duty comes to an end as the Mistress of Ceremonies